It was clear that any answers to be found regarding the goings-on in this Arctic outpost would be found on board the Phantom. The three of us agreed on a plan of advance. Having the greatest acquaintance with the decadent cabins of the Phantom, I would infiltrate Salazar's vessel and search for anything pertaining to the operations on the ground below. Oft would infiltrate the factory and try to gather what it was they were building, perhaps shed some light on the strange dome structure in the center of the base. Lily would return to the longboat and bring it about to behind the cliff ledge dividing the British base and Walrus Bay. Should the occasion call for it, she would sail about and rescue Oft and I with the longboat's formidable Gatling gun. When she had returned to the longboat, she would radio the Hysteria and bring the others up to speed. Oft and Lily turned on their communicators, and we split up. As Lily walked back to the longboat and Oft began to descend the cliffside towards the factory, I began to circle the rim of the cliff towards the Phantom, keeping a buffer of 30 meters between myself and the edge to conceal my presence from any sharp-eyed lookout in the base below. I reached the black vessel, anchored to the cliff's edge by 2 thick iron chains, and surveyed its frame for means of ingress. I have infiltrated Salazar's Zeppelin on many occasions, but not always so covertly. I couldn't go in through the passenger door, nor the window without raising the alarm. My best option was through the drop hatch at the stern of the hull, through which Salazar's automaton drones were deployed. Making sure my weapons and tools were secured on my belt, I took hold of the anchor chain and began to climb hand over hand up towards the ship. Reaching the end of the chain, I tightened my grip and swung my legs over to a narrow ledge on the lower hull. I slowly inched my way towards the stern until I found the drop hatch. From my tool belt, I took a magnetic hook and line and secured myself to the hull. Not being a typical port of entry, the hatch was not locked, though it did take a significant amount of my strength to pry it open. Crawling up through the dark pipe behind the hatch proved a difficult feat, overcome by pressing my hands and feet against opposite sides of the narrow tunnel, advancing one limb at a time. Reaching the top of the pipe, I emerged into the drone dock, faced by rows of Salazar's daunting automata. Salazar has always had a knack for monotonous design. Barrel-chested shells with heads shaped like bullets and segmented steel appendages, like iron beetles, so very unoriginal. To my fortune, they were dormant, allowing me to pass through the dock unnoticed. I came to the door at the end of the dock, and turned the lock wheel, but paused to take hold of the hilt of my cutlass before opening it. In one swift motion, I burst through the doorway and drew my cutlass. But there were no guards, no alarms, just an empty corridor, albeit a grossly decadent corridor, lit with filigree gold lanterns, walled with dark mahogany, and floored with a red velvet carpet, every tuppence of it paid for with blood money. I swiftly but silently crept through the lavish corridor towards Salazar's cabin, all the while keeping my hand on the hilt of my cutlass. Yet not one solitary being, human or mechanical, did I encounter. Turning a corner, I reached the tall double doors of Salazar's cabin, the first locked doorway I had encountered since stepping aboard the abhorrent vessel. Kneeling to the level of the lock, I extended the lock-picking device on my mad hat, and had the doors open within 10 seconds flat. Salazar's cabin was as I remember it. High ceilings, velvet curtains, a fireplace, a bloody fireplace. The chandelier was new, but otherwise nothing had changed. Yet once again the room was deserted. Of all the lavish cabins aboard Salazar's vessel, surely this one would be heavily guarded and certainly alarmed. But it genuinely seemed that there was nobody home. Eager to find something that may reveal the purpose of the base below, I came to Salazar's desk and was faced with a clutter of books and papers. Rifling through them, I found many of them to be copies of flight orders, written lists of engineering supplies, and an array of personal letters to and from Queen Vicky, which nearly made me retch. Unsurprisingly, I came upon a copy of the wire which we had intercepted and followed to Greenland. Searching for additional chapters of this correspondence, I continued to rifle through the papers on his desk, when I came upon a curious-looking, leather-bound folder. Its cover was emblazoned with the words, "Sword of Damocles," in bright gold letters, an epithet referencing a giant sword suspended by a single thread over the head of a would-be king of ancient Greek legend. Opening the folder, I noticed that some of the papers contained therein were significantly older than others. I withdrew the first of these aged pages, and my heart skipped a tick. There are few words in even fewer languages that can make the hairs on my neck stand endwise. One such word was written in the center of the parchment that I held in my trembling hand. The implications of its presence in a folder on Salazar's desk were infinitely terrible. It was a word that I had read once before, and had hoped to high ether that I would never see again. Teleforce.